Design Basics Course Introduction. Before we get started here in this first video lesson, introduction, I'd like to first introduce myself. My name is Brendan Soares, and I am a designer and developer. I do web applications and mobile applications, and I've been tinkering around with design since I was 13, so I've always had an interest in it. I did not go to college, did not go to a specialized school for design or development, really. I'm all self-taught, and I strongly believe that anyone can learn just about anything as long as they don't have any serious disabilities. So any average person can apply themselves. And what I like to do now is to help others to learn more about design, because design is all around us, and design is a very cool and fun part of being human. The ability to create things is unique to human beings, which is cool. So anyway, a little more about myself. I currently have my own little brand, smallpresence.com. It's small and then presence like being somewhere, Presence, if you want to check it out. See my portfolio and whatever else. But I pretty much just do freelance design contract basis with different projects. And that's it. So I jumped on Craigslist and made a little post about my desire to mentor some people interested in design. And I got a few responses. So that's where Design Lessons YouTube channel comes from. So now you have the background on that. Let's go ahead and get started on the course introduction on this first course, Design Basics. Purpose of this course. We want to be able to master the 3 C's of design. Now those 3 C's are composition, components, and concept. Now each one of these has its own group of items that we'll discuss in future topics, future lessons. So suffice to say right now, just kind of try to remember these things. and to help you remember, I came up with this little phrase. The composition of components conveys concept to audience. Again, that's the composition of components conveys concept to the audience. So I introduced a new element there. The fourth one is audience. And audience is a key factor to making sure that the 3 C's are doing what they're supposed to be doing with design and that they're accomplishing something. So we'll get into that more later. Let's go ahead and get to the next slide. How to prepare for each lesson. Now, just keep in mind that each lesson is released weekly so that you'll have time to learn gradually and apply what you learn. Along with that, each lesson covers one major topic. So we're not going to oversaturate you with information, knowledge, things that you're going to try to remember and probably forget about. We're going to cover one major topic. And as you guess, what we'll probably end up doing is covering each of the 3 C's in its own video lesson, as well as audience itself. Now also, each lesson has one homework assignment, and this is something that I will work on progressively as we evolve through this whole experience of making design lessons on YouTube. But each homework assignment will have the objective of helping you apply what you learn for that week. For instance, if you learn about composition for that week, we will have an assignment for you to practice different compositions, like groupings and divisions and things like that we'll get into later. Okay, now it's important for you to remember this. Practice perfects, discipline directs. You need to remember this thought throughout the lessons because it's really key to you learning and progressing. Now, practice perfects. If you want to learn, you need to keep practicing. Simple as that. If you want to learn, keep practicing. Don't stop just because what you're doing isn't pro yet. You're not going to be pro in the first couple times you try. So keep on trying. Just a side note, anyone who learns anything, for the first few times they practice that thing, that skill, they suck. Just like I did, just like you will, and just like every other designer out there. Even those famous artists and musicians like Beethoven, Bach, uh, Leonardo, Da Vinci, and all those people began somewhere, and their first works weren't perfect, but they kept on practicing, and they got perfect. And perfect means complete. So practice will perfect your skills. Just remember that. Don't be discouraged. Next, discipline directs. If you want to grow, look for criticism. That is discipline. Discipline will set you straight in the path you ought to be going. So ask your friends and family, even if they're not artistically inclined or not having a lot of background in design, ask them what they think. Ask me. I'll give you some sincere criticism. Go on. Next, discipline directs. If you want to grow, look for criticism. That is discipline. Discipline will set you straight in the path you ought to be going. So ask your friends and family, even if they're not artistically inclined or not having a lot of background in design, ask them what they think. Ask me. I'll give you some sincere criticism. Go online and find communities and forums and blogs and different resources like that and ask for criticism. And grow from that. Because that will direct you in the right way to go, as opposed to just learning bad habits and practicing those habits until they're perfected, which is a horrible thing to do. So, that's it. Practice perfects, discipline directs. Next, Lesson 1 preview. Now our first lesson will be about this topic. What is design? Now that's a pretty taunting question to ask for some people, but design is really simple. And you're going to learn to understand these key points. You'll learn to understand the two different kinds of design, both aesthetic, also known as form, or aesthetic design, as well as functional design. So you learn about form and function. But I like saying aesthetic, it's more obvious. You'll also learn to understand the basics of the 3 C's of design, which we already touched on in the first slide. Those 3 C's each have their own little community of principles that you'll have to learn and apply. So we'll begin touching on the basics of those 3 C's, as well as getting to each one of those in following lessons. And finally, in the first lesson 1 on what is design, you'll learn the key to effective design. In other words, you'll learn to understand what makes a good designer good, a great designer great, and one design better than the other. So those are the 3 things we're going to focus in on our first lesson. So you can look forward to that next week. So that's about it for this introduction to design basics. You can look forward to each lesson being about 15 minutes long. Again, it'll be simple, short, and sweet. If you have any questions, you can post on the comment section of the video, or you can email me. If you have this Design Lessons YouTube channel, you most likely have my email, and if not, you can just private message me or whatever on YouTube. Anyway, I hope this wasn't too boring for you. This is my first go around at doing public lessons for anybody really, and YouTube nonetheless. So I've been using Cam Studio and OpenOffice, Impress. I'll be using Windows Live Movie Maker, and I'm using Audacity to record this. So this is all very basic right now. So I kind of apologize if it seems that way, but the information we're going to get into is still the information we're going to get into, no matter how it's presented. So I will admit, be the first one to admit, this is not the most well-designed video lesson, but hey, it's a first attempt, so bear with me, right? I will make one more point for you guys. I know a lot of you guys are probably interested in designing websites specifically and doing those designs in Photoshop. But honestly, I very rarely use Photoshop. I really don't prefer it, mainly because it's just ridiculously priced and I kind of want to boycott it. So I only use it when the project requires it. I actually use open source tools, which, I don't know, it's just a personal vendetta of mine. I use tools for raster images like GIMP. I use vector image editing like Inkscape, which is an awesome app. Do that for just about everything. And other myriads of tools like Linux, Apache, PHP, MySQL. I use Linode.com VPS servers and whatever else. So that should pretty much sum up everything I want to touch on in this lesson. Just remember, keep at it and don't be discouraged. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Alright, that's it.